If a commercial freighter drags its anchor off the coast of South Africa right now and severs a submarine cable, um, millions of people instantly lose their digital lives.
Yeah, literally instantly. It's incredibly fragile.
Right. Banking just grinds to a halt, logistics freeze up entirely, and hospitals lose access to critical cloud data. It's a nightmare scenario.
Absolutely. We've seen how disruptive those ocean cable cuts can be.
But the solution to that massive, super fragile ocean infrastructure problem isn't actually in the water.
No, it's not.
It is currently being strapped to high-voltage power lines in the middle of landlocked Zimbabwe.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a massive stack of sources today. We've got Paratus Group financial filings, state utility reports from Zambia, and a bunch of Southern African telecom briefings.
Right, and we're unpacking a major digital infrastructure breakthrough that's happening right now.
Exactly. Our mission today is to show you exactly how this is being done. Because this goes so far beyond just laying down some fiber optic cable.
Oh, way beyond. We are looking at a masterclass in how a traditionally dependent, landlocked nation is completely rewiring its own geography.
Yeah, Zimbabwe is actively transforming itself into this high-tech digital transit hub. And the mechanics of how they are pulling this off are genuinely brilliant.
They really are. The traditional narrative, it often pits state utilities against private tech companies.
Right, you always assume they have totally opposing goals.
Exactly. But what we are seeing in the source material today flips that entire assumption upside down.
It's a story about solving massive public infrastructure deficits with some really ingenious financial instruments, not to mention a massive shift in regional geopolitics.
So much geopolitics.
By the end of this deep dive, you are going to completely rethink how the physical backbone of the internet is funded, built, and protected.
Especially in developing regions.
Right. So the catalyst for all of this happened pretty recently, on July 3, 2026.
That was the big day.
Yeah, Powertel Communications, which operates as a subsidiary of the State Electricity Authority in Zimbabwe, ZESA. They officially activated the first phase of this massive cross-border fiber optic corridor.
And this was in partnership with Paratus Group, right?
Correct. Paratus is a private Pan-African telecommunications firm. They flipped the switch on a high-speed link connecting Plumtree to Bulawayo.
Which is huge. Bulawayo is the industrial heart of Zimbabwe, so making that connection is a critical domestic milestone right off the bat.
Yeah.
But more importantly, from a macro perspective, this establishes the very first active Paratus-connected route stretching directly from the border right into the country's core.
And the roadmap shows they are moving incredibly fast. Like, Phase 2 is slated for activation in September of 2026.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah, they're pushing that connection from Bulawayo all the way up to Livingstone in Zambia. So you end up with this contiguous line running from Botswana through the entirety of Zimbabwe and up into Zambia.
They are calling it a digital spine, which I think is just a perfect term for it.
It really is.
Because it's a spine that operates on an entirely different level of capacity than the region's legacy networks. To really understand the scale of what is happening, we have to look at the specific hardware they are deploying.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are out there picturing a standard fiber optic cable handling standard traffic, we really need to upgrade that image.
Yeah, toss that image out.
Exactly. This new network relies on something called DWDM. That stands for Dense Wavelength Division Multiplexing.
Right.
Now, obviously, the internet's physical, right? It's basically glass tubes buried in the ground. But DWDM fundamentally changes how those tubes operate.
It's basically magic. Well, physics, but it feels like magic.
It really does. Think of it like this. Imagine shining a bright white flashlight down a long mirrored pipe. That's your standard single-lane dirt road. It's one signal.
Okay.
But if you place a prism at the entrance of that pipe, you split that white light into its core colors. You get red, blue, green, yellow.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, DWDM essentially does that, but with lasers. It splits the light into dozens of distinct wavelengths or colors, and it sends a different data stream down every single shade simultaneously.
Through the exact same physical strand of glass.
Exactly. It's like a multi-level superhighway.
It is a phenomenal feat of physics. You bypass the need to constantly dig up the ground to lay more cables because you're just maximizing the capacity of the glass that is already there.
Right. The glass stays the same. The lasers get smarter.
By multiplexing the light like that, the volume of data you can transmit just scales exponentially.
And the technical specs on this Plumtree to Bulawayo route are staggering. The sources indicate the initial equipped capacity right out of the gate is 800 gigabits per second.
Which is already massive.
Massive. But because of that DWDM hardware we just talked about,
Sure.
the physical infrastructure is vastly overbuilt. The network is technically capable of pushing past 10 terabits per second.
10 terabits. That is, I mean, they are entirely future-proofing the region.
Yeah, they aren't messing around.
The architects of this network aren't looking at the data demands of 2026. They are looking at 2036.
Because they know what's coming.
Exactly. They are anticipating an absolute explosion in regional data traffic. You've got AI integration, mass cloud migration, and huge increases in mobile broadband adoption across all of Southern Africa.
Right.
10 terabits per second provides the runway for that entire digital transformation.
But wait, here's where it gets really interesting, because if we're talking about building a 10 terabit superhighway spanning 3 different countries, the hardware, the lasers, the sheer labor required must cost an absolute fortune.
Oh, hundreds of millions.
Right. And state-owned utilities in developing nations aren't exactly known for having billions in liquid capital just lying around.
Very true.
Plus, international tech firms usually demand heavy guarantees before deploying that kind of high-end hardware. So how exactly is Zimbabwe paying for this?
What's fascinating here is how the legal framework of this partnership completely neutralizes the financial risk for both parties. You are highlighting the classic infrastructure chicken and egg problem.
Right, exactly.
A state entity struggles to raise upfront capital, while a private firm absolutely refuses to sink millions into infrastructure on foreign soil where they don't even own the physical ground.
Yeah, I was actually reading through the initial June 2025 agreement between Powertel and Paratus. That's where I got stuck.
Oh, yeah.
On paper, it looks like Powertel is just renting out its pipes. My first thought was, isn't this just the government renting out its infrastructure? What happens if the state utility faces a massive debt crisis, or management completely turns over, or, the utility goes bankrupt?
That's a very valid concern.
Doesn't Paratus risk losing a multi-million-dollar investment overnight?
Well, in a standard lease agreement, they absolutely would.
Right.
But they are utilizing a financial instrument called an IRU. That stands for an Indefeasible Right of Use.
Indefeasible, meaning what exactly?
Indefeasible literally translates to unable to be voided, annulled, or undone by any circumstance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is a permanent, irrevocable contract, and these typically span 20 to 30 years. Under the IRU, Powertel and the Zimbabwean government retain absolute physical ownership of the cables, the transmission towers, and the sovereign right to the ground.
Okay, so the state maintains total control of its own territory. They own the physical roads, so to speak.
Yes, but Paratus purchases the permanent, irrevocable right to the capacity flowing through those cables.
Ah, I see.
So if Powertel faces severe financial headwinds, or even if they enter formal bankruptcy proceedings, the Paratus IRU is legally ring-fenced. It is completely untouchable.
Okay, I see the logic there, but I have to push back a little on the idea of it being completely bulletproof.
Sure, go ahead.
It's still a physical cable buried in the dirt of a sovereign nation. If a new administration comes in and decides to abruptly nationalize all telecommunications infrastructure, a piece of paper, even an indefeasible one, doesn't stop a government bulldozer from literally ripping up the conduit.
Well, a physical bulldozer? No. But a geopolitical bulldozer is an entirely different story.
What do you mean by that?
This is where the broader regional treaties of the SADC come into play. That's the Southern African Development Community.
Right, the regional bloc.
Exactly. To violate an internationally backed IRU with a massive Pan-African partner like Paratus wouldn't just breach a single contract.
You would have ripple effects.
Massive ones. It would trigger an immediate halt to all foreign direct investment into the country's tech sector. It would sever their integration with neighboring grids. The economic fallout of nationalizing that asset would vastly outweigh any short-term benefit of seizing it.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The IRU is respected because violating it is basically mutually assured economic destruction.
Precisely. And from a financial perspective, this contract actually transforms the fiber itself into a brand new type of asset.
Oh, right. I saw that in the filings. They mention Paratus securing rights over dark fiber.
Yes, dark fiber.
Now, those who might not spend their days reading telecom balance sheets, dark fiber refers to extra strands of glass that are laid underground but aren't yet hooked up to the lasers. They are unlit.
No data flowing through them at all.
Right.
They are essentially empty glass tubes just waiting for future demand. But because the IRU grants a permanent 30-year right to that dark fiber, Paratus can actually treat it as a hard financial asset.
Like real estate.
Exactly like real estate. They can take that contract to a bank and use it as collateral for further loans to buy more of that expensive DWDM hardware.
Wow.
They have turned a dormant piece of glass buried in the dirt into a highly liquid, tradable financial commodity. That is what makes the massive upfront cost of this infrastructure entirely bankable.
That is so incredibly clever. So what does this all mean for the everyday person? We have this elegant financial instrument, and we've got DWDM lasers shooting terabits of data across international borders.
This sounds very high level.
Right. Paratus gets a bulletproof asset. The state gets its infrastructure funded. But how does this actually translate to the person living in, say, a rural Zimbabwean town?
Well, to map the domestic impact, we really need to evaluate the legacy infrastructure, because Zimbabwe isn't building this from scratch.
No, they already have some players.
Right. They have Telone, which is the state-owned fixed-line provider. They operate a roughly 3,000-kilometer national backbone.
And they also have Liquid Intelligent Technologies, right? They run the largest existing fiber network in the country, alongside various private ISPs managing those last-mile connections to people's homes.
Exactly. So the critical bottleneck isn't an absence of fiber in the country. It is the geography of that fiber.
Where it's located.
Right. Much of the older legacy infrastructure is heavily concentrated in major urban and commercial centers. Think Harare, Bulawayo, Victoria Falls.
Which makes sense because that is where the highest density of paying customers lives.
Exactly.
Trenching a brand new fiber optic cable through hundreds of miles of rock, farmland, and national parks just to reach a remote village is a logistical nightmare.
It's prohibitively expensive.
You have to secure environmental permits, hire massive manual labor crews, disrupt local roadways. The economics of laying rural fiber traditionally just do not pencil out for private companies.
And this is where Powertel leverages its structural advantage to bypass the trenching problem entirely.
How so?
Well, remember, the parent company of Powertel is ZESA, the National Electricity Authority.
Right, the power grid.
Yes.
Yeah.
ZESA already has the sprawling network of high-voltage transmission towers connecting nearly every corner of the entire country.
Wait, so they are taking the new fiber and just piggybacking it onto the power grid?
In a very literal sense, yes. They utilize a technology known as optical ground wire, or OPGW.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
If you look at a massive high-voltage electrical pylon, the very top wire isn't actually carrying electricity to homes.
It's not.
No, it is a ground wire designed to attract lightning strikes and protect the power lines below it.
Oh, that makes sense.
So OPGW replaces that standard steel ground wire with a specialized cable that has a hollow steel tube at its core, packed with fiber optic strands.
That is phenomenal engineering.
Isn't it?
So the steel outer layer takes the lightning strike and grounds it, while the glass strands safely tucked inside carry terabits of internet traffic.
Yes. By using the existing power grid footprint, Powertel completely bypasses the need to dig trenches. They eliminate the most expensive, politically complex, and environmentally disruptive phase of network expansion.
That's genius.
A crew simply drives along the existing power line corridor and swaps out the top wire. In doing so, they are effectively datafying previously isolated rural communities.
Oh.
Towns that might have waited another 20 years for a telecom company to justify the cost of trenching fiber to them are suddenly sitting right underneath a 10-terabit digital superhighway.
And reading through the sources, they heavily tie this rural expansion back to Zimbabwe's Vision 2030.
Right, their economic blueprint.
Yes, their national blueprint for achieving an upper middle income economy.
When you drastically lower the physical cost of deployment like that, you fundamentally lower the cost of data for the end consumer.
Which is the ultimate goal. Yeah. Exactly. Affordable, high-speed data isn't just about faster streaming. It is the absolute prerequisite for participating in the modern economy.
It enables remote education, telemedicine, e-commerce.
And crucially, mobile money platforms. Those serve as the primary banking infrastructure for millions of unbanked citizens.
You are taking geographically isolated populations and hardwiring them directly into the formal digital economy. The macroeconomic ripple effects of ubiquitous, cheap broadband are just transformative.
Absolutely. Now, connecting rural communities is obviously a massive domestic win. But if we zoom out a bit, there's a geopolitical shift occurring here that is even more fascinating.
Oh, for sure.
Historically, being a landlocked country in the digital age is a distinct disadvantage.
It really is.
You are entirely at the mercy of your coastal neighbors to access the submarine cables that connect the African continent to the global internet.
Yeah.
I mean, for decades, Zimbabwe has been completely dependent on data routing through South Africa or Mozambique.
And that structural dependency leaves a nation highly vulnerable.
Right.
If a neighboring country experiences a political crisis, or a massive grid failure, or even just a commercial dispute, a landlocked nation can find its digital oxygen supply instantly throttled.
But this Powertel and Paratus corridor completely rewrites that dynamic.
It does.
By building a high-capacity spine that spans from Botswana through Zimbabwe and up to Zambia, Zimbabwe is transitioning from a dependent consumer of bandwidth into a central telecommunications gateway for the entire region.
A true transit hub. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this infrastructure perfectly illustrates the strategic mandate of the SADC framework we mentioned earlier.
Right.
The Southern African Development Community approaches regional infrastructure very differently than other global blocs. The mandate is collaborative multilateralism.
So it's not a zero-sum game.
Exactly. The goal isn't for one single nation to establish monopolistic dominance over the region's digital trade.
Though we should probably acknowledge that South Africa still exerts immense gravitational pull in this region.
Oh, undeniably.
They have the highest GDP, the most sophisticated cloud architecture, massive hyperscale data centers, think AWS and Microsoft.
Right.
And they serve as the primary landing station for nearly all the major subsea cables.
South Africa's position as the regional heavyweight is undisputed. Zimbabwe is not attempting to usurp South Africa's status as the primary digital anchor.
Okay, so what are they doing then?
Instead, Zimbabwe is cultivating what analysts call functional influence.
Functional influence. Break down how that operates in practice.
Yeah.
We have Zimbabwe providing the sovereign land corridor and the existing Ziesa power line backbone, right?
Yes.
And Paratus brings the IRU financing, the continental network reach, and the DWDM lasers.
Yeah.
How does that symbiosis actually translate into geopolitical power for Zimbabwe?
It translates into indispensability.
Okay.
In network architecture, the most valuable commodity besides pure speed is resilience. Let's return to the scenario you painted at the very beginning of our deep dive.
The freighter dropping its anchor.
Exactly. A commercial ship drops an anchor off the coast of Cape Town and severs a primary subsea cable. Or, say, a major terrestrial route in a neighboring country goes dark due to rolling blackouts.
Which happens a lot.
It does. Suddenly, millions of data packets need a new path, instantly.
Ah, I see. Because this new 10 terabit digital spine exists, internet traffic from Zambia, Botswana, or even parts of South Africa can be seamlessly rerouted straight through Zimbabwe's highly resilient OPGW network.
Precisely. Zimbabwe provides what the industry calls a critical diversity route.
The diversity row.
They have engineered a solution to the region's most glaring vulnerability, which is the reliance on single, fragile points of failure.
Wow.
Zimbabwe's geopolitical influence no longer relies on military or pure economic size. It stems entirely from its utility.
That is fascinating.
They secure a much larger seat at the regional diplomatic table because their physical infrastructure actively protects the digital economies of all their neighbors.
Which is such a brilliant strategy. But, this raises an important question when looking at this complex web of multilateral reliance.
What's that?
Well, Zambia relies on Zimbabwe's diversity route. Zimbabwe relies on Paratus's hardware and South Africa's subsea cables. South Africa benefits from the regional stability this network provides.
Right, it's a web.
So are we witnessing the genuine creation of a unified, borderless digital market in Southern Africa? Or is this merely a temporary alliance of convenience driven by private capital seeking a return that could easily fracture the moment national security interests collide with these multilateral treaties?
Honestly, that is the defining tension of modern infrastructure development.
Yeah.
Multilateralism creates immense efficiency, but the instinct to protect national sovereignty is always simmering just beneath the surface.
Always.
The genius of the IRU model, though, is that it legally and financially binds these state and private actors together for a minimum of 20 to 30 years.
It's a long time to be locked in.
It is. And that kind of long-term financial entanglement heavily incentivizes political unity. You don't want to break the treaty when your own economy depends on the returns.
Sure.
However, as data infrastructure is increasingly classified as critical national security, how these SADC nations balance their shared reliance against their individual sovereignty, that will really dictate the economic trajectory of the entire continent.
Yeah. It is incredible to peel back the layers of something as seemingly mundane as an internet connection.
It's never just a cable.
No, never.
Yeah.
Just to summarize the journey we've mapped out today, we started with that July 2026 activation of the Plumtree to Bulawayo link, establishing the first leg of a contiguous three-country digital spine.
Right?
We explored how the Indefeasible Right of Use, the IRU, solved the infrastructure funding trap. It allowed a state utility and a private firm to turn unlit dark fiber into a highly bankable financial asset without violating any sovereign rights.
And we examined the physical engineering, too, how swapping the standard ground wire on high-voltage electrical transmission towers for OPGW fiber optic lines entirely bypassed the need for expensive trenching.
Which is just so cool.
It really is. It brings terabit speeds to underserved rural communities and massively advances Vision 2030.
And finally, we tracked the massive geopolitical shift, watching Zimbabwe leverage its central geography to provide a vital digital diversity route.
Moving from a position of historical dependency to becoming an indispensable functional hub for the entire southern African region.
It is a phenomenal intersection of optical physics, creative infrastructure financing, and multilateral diplomacy.
It really is the perfect storm of innovation.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for you listening, the next time you tap a screen, load a map, or stream a video, we hope you picture what is actually happening behind the glass.
Because that data isn't just floating in a weightless cloud somewhere.
Exactly. It relies on decades-long legal treaties. It relies on DWDM lasers splitting light through miles of glass strapped to the top of rural power grids. And it relies on brilliant public-private problem-solving to literally keep the lights on and the data flowing.
The physical architecture of the internet is undeniably the most vital foundational infrastructure of the 21st century.
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over as we wrap up. For centuries, global superpowers built their empires by controlling vital physical bottlenecks. Think the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal.
Right.
As our entire global economy becomes wholly dependent on ultra-high-speed data capacity, will a nation's ability to control and protect these critical digital diversity routes eventually yield the exact same geopolitical leverage as controlling the world's physical shipping lanes?
That's a great question.
The internet might feel invisible to the end user, but the physical power it generates is very, very real. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep looking beneath the surface, and we'll catch you next time.